Welcome to the Timescales Interviews. I'm Grego, your host, and tonight we have a very special guest, comic and graphic novel creator and marketer, none other than Michael Bancroft. Hi, Michael. How are you?
Hi, how you going? Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Thanks for being available. This interview is being conducted in the United States and the Southern Hemisphere. Am I correct that you are currently located in Australia?
Yep, Melbourne, Australia, right down there in the south.
Okay. So it's my understanding that Australia has 4 time zones if you include Christmas Island.
I think that is correct. Yes, 3. It's
Yeah.
the one on the far west is Perth, and that's I think 3 hours behind where I am at now.
Okay. And we have 4 time zones here. Right now it's 7:53, so whereas it would be 10:53 in New York City, for example. So what's the weather like there today?
It's winter here, so it's cold, but it's not too miserable. It's pretty good. It's okay.
Okay. I wish it was winter here. It's getting a tad warm.
That was how it is.
To put it mildly. So all right. Well, thank you for joining me. I've been following your YouTube channel and following your marketing of Lucent, and I think it's very interesting. And I appreciate you setting the time aside to talk about this. So who is Michael Bancroft, and what is a typical day in life like for you?
I am a graphic designer by trade. That's my day job. Family man. And I'm just someone who loves comics and storytelling and all that sort of stuff. My typical day, I mean, when I'm working is, I get up early, about 5 a.m., start drawing or do whatever else needs to get done on the book. And I get to do that until about 9 o'clock. I have to get ready to go to work. Then I work. If it's a day where I'm streaming in the middle of that day, I will do a stream during my lunch break. And then after work, it's a little bit of family time, dinner, and then I'm right back into it until I realize I have to go to bed because I got to get up early the next morning and do it all over again.
Okay, so you have 2 full-time jobs, family man and what you're working on.
Yep, pretty much.
Okay. Do you have any crazy secret hobbies that maybe few people know about, like maybe skydiving or stamp collecting or anything like that?
Nothing crazy, but I really love tabletop board games. And I've got a whole cupboard just full of them. And, the kids are always wanting to play them when we have time. And I did go through a period where I went a bit crazy buying games. I had to stop. But yeah, that's probably, I don't have time for much else. So, a little game here and there I can slip into family time.
Okay, cool. Okay, so you are the creator of the Lucent comic graphic novel, if you wish. And we're going to go into that here in a moment. I guess the elephant on the living room sofa right now would be that you just topped $45,000 in crowdfunding on this project, which is the largest crowdsourced comic or graphic novel that I've ever seen. And this just happened in the last hour. How do you feel about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's the biggest one out there, but it's massive for me. It's definitely the biggest I've ever done. I feel amazed, privileged, shocked, blessed. It's been a wild ride to get here. It's taken a long time. I started from nothing really in terms of presence in the scene. It's been about 4 or 5 years to get here. I'm over the moon. It's, this is what I want to do. So the fact that it's going so well currently, it's very, very encouraging.
Okay, excellent. And where can people find this campaign? Would it be thelucentcomic.com?
Thelucentcomic.com is currently the only place it's being hosted. That's my home base. That's my website that I'm going forward with as my main platform. That's not to say I won't ever put it onto the other crowdfunding platforms as a sort of secondary campaign with extra stuff. But at least for now and going into the future, you will always be able to find me on thelucentcomic.com.
Okay, very good. Now, getting into you and your background just a little bit, do you recall when you first saw a comic?
The first comic I ever saw was at a train station. I was probably very young, 5, 6, 7, 8, something like that. And my mother bought it for me for the train ride. I've still got it. It's an old Flintstones comic. But after that point, I didn't think I really picked them up. I was into the cartoons and stuff, but it wasn't until I was 11 and my friends, I was at their house, and one of my friends was reading Iron Man and GI Joe. The other one was reading X-Men. So I thought, well, I'll go and pick up something for myself. And I went there and I found a Spider-Man, and I knew Spider-Man because everyone knows Spider-Man. So I thought, all right, that'll work. And yeah, that was 1991, and that was the beginning. I was hooked at that point.
1991. So, did you have comics in your grocery stores,
Oh yeah,
or
yeah.
were
I
okay?
rode the bike down to, we have things called news agencies, which are these stores. I don't even know if they're around much anymore. Newspapers, magazines, gift stuff. And there was a massive section back in those days of all kinds of comics. Marvel, DC, obviously, but all the big independents, some even the small local independents, magazines and everything related to comics. It was a big thing in the early 90s. So yeah, I probably had a selection of about 50 comics, 50 titles to choose from. And I ended up going with Spider-Man. It's all I could
Okay,
afford.
okay. And did they happen to come out every week where there would be a new issue to look forward to?
Well, I'm not sure if Marvel and DC were on the same monthly release schedule, but I got my comics monthly. And I only ever bought Marvel stuff. I was never really into the DC stuff. So for me, it was monthly, which was good because the way I would pay for them is my mother would give me money for the bus and sometimes for lunch, and then I would just walk and not eat. And I would
Okay,
save that up over the course of a month. And I go into this news agency with this stack of coins and just plop them down and get 20 comics at once or something.
okay. So you would actually sacrifice your lunch money for comics instead.
I had to. I mean, there was no other way.
Okay, yeah, I get that. I used to do the same thing with the coins that my parents gave me, and I used it for coin-operated video games.
Yeah, I
So,
did that too.
okay, all right, with you there. So do you enjoy music, movies, or television by any chance?
All three. Always been big into music. Music is probably the number one source of my kind of creative inspiration. We have a really vibrant live music scene here in Melbourne. I don't get to go to live shows anymore because of, I'm a family man now. I've got young kids, but before we had kids, we were going out to music every week. And I still, when I draw, my preferred thing is to put on some music and just let that shuffle through. And yeah, movies and TV, yeah, huge. I love that stuff.
Okay, that's interesting that you would say that you can listen to music while you're drawing. Some people can't multitask like
Mhm.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, movies, not a good idea because I get distracted and I get out of the zone. Because when you're drawing, you have to sort of really get into this headspace. And I'm fine with the music, but listening to things, talking, or even if I know what's happening, I don't have to watch. It still, yeah, it messes with my mojo a bit there.
Okay. Now, did you go to live concerts?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I've probably been to hundreds. Because you don't have to
Wow.
go to a big stadium concert here in Melbourne. You can just go to a bar or a pub or a smaller venue. And it's a lot cheaper, but the bands are great. You get 3 or 4 bands in a night. We used to do that every week.
Okay. What are some of the bigger bands that you've seen live?
Metallica,
Mm, there we go.
Muse.
Right here from San Francisco.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't get many of the big bands out here unless it's for a festival.
Mhm.
I've seen quite a few big ones at festivals like, Foo Fighters, Red Hot Chili Peppers, and I mean, so many, but there's even really great local bands that are, really big here. I don't know how big they are in the States. Sometimes they get big. Obviously, AC/DC was at one point a Melbourne band. So yeah, although I never got to see AC/DC live, which was a shame because I hear it's absolutely amazing.
It is. I got to catch them one time, and the sound feels like it's going right through your chest.
Yeah,
It is
yeah.
unbelievable. So as far as movies, could you name maybe a couple of your favorite movies that you like?
Sure. I mean, classics like Gladiator. I love Silence of the Lambs. I love uh Lord of the Rings. I mean, in terms of movies made from comic books, I really dig V for Vendetta, which wasn't a big budget film, but I really dig that movie. I watch that quite often. Um, yeah, I mean, tons of movies are hard to say the ones that you like the best because there's so many and they're so different. But yeah, that's a
Right.
pretty good spread of some of my favorite movies.
Okay. And what do you watch on TV these days?
Um, Mel's my wife. We tend to watch at the end of the night. We'll put on shows that we watch through streaming services like Apple Plus and stuff like that. I like sci-fi fantasy stuff. But I will watch pretty much anything. We just finished watching a TV show called From. I'm watching a sci-fi show called Foundation now. I love Arcane, which is an animated show that came out a couple of years ago, which I'm really excited for the second season of. But yeah, mostly, that kind of the new format of show where it's, one season kind of is an entire arc, and
Mhm.
you get 10 or so episodes in the season. That's sort of what I'm really into these days.
Okay. What about Star Trek?
Loved Star Trek back in the day. Got into it in high school. Next Generation was always my favorite. I introduced Mel to Voyager, which was kind of a guilty pleasure because I know it wasn't the best, but I like it. But really after Voyager, I kind of dipped out and didn't really, I like the movies and stuff, but I haven't really been into any of the new Trek. There's actually a new show called The Orville, which is the
Mhm.
closest
Yeah.
to original Star Trek that I've found, which I love as well.
Yeah. The Orville by Seth MacFarlane.
Hmm.
And I absolutely love that. And that's interesting. You would mention introducing Mel to Voyager, because Star Trek The Next Generation was also my favorite series. And my wife introduced me to Voyager, and I didn't realize that the character development in is a bit superior to that of The Next Generation.
I don't know if you
And
can see it. I know it's above the camera there. Mel bought me a DVD box set in a Borg cube of the Voyager series. We no
nice.
longer have a DVD player, but it's still up there.
Okay. No, we still have a DVD player, but I don't know where it is.
Yeah.
So okay. Did you happen to come from a home where books, comics, and TV and movies were common? Was there music on all the time?
Yes.
Was the television on all the time?
Yeah, definitely. So
Yeah.
I don't remember it, but I was taken to Empire Strikes Back as a newborn. I think it had been
Nice.
out, 3 months or something. So I was literally born into Star Wars. I was a massive Star Wars fan right up until about the time of the prequels. But uh yes, my mother would always, take me to movies and stuff. We would always watch TV shows together. We always had loads of books. We just have libraries, bookshelves just scattered around the house that you could kind of dive into, and that's where I started reading my first books. I was really the only one who was into comics, but I had that was my own thing. My brothers started getting into it a little bit, but they kind of dipped out of it.
Okay. So you were surrounded by entertainment media.
Yes, yeah, and I remember
And
saying from a very young
with
age,
books
I
being
wanted
media.
to. Yeah, I wanted to write stories from a very young age. That was always there. So I think, yeah, that was definitely an environment that fostered that.
Okay, so you say that from a young age, you always wanted to write stories. What about being an artist?
That was always just something that I did, but it wasn't what I really wanted to do. There was a short time a period there I wanted to draw comic books and stuff. But I was just I was young and I just saw how good everyone was, and I thought, oh well, I'll never be that good. So I just kind of continued it on as a hobby. But I always thought I could definitely tell stories. Um, so I never stopped drawing and everything. But it was really the storytelling side of it that would drew me much more than the art side of stuff.
What were your favorite types of stories?
Um, really anything. I remember the first book I ever read was To Kill a Mockingbird, which I loved. My mother had a whole suite of classics, the uh um oh, I'm forgetting the name of that. Is it Caruso? Uh those sorts of
Robinson Crusoe?
books. Yeah. Then we had a whole bunch of British books like the Fantastic Five and the stuff like that. And then eventually I started liking more fantasy, um, dragons and adventures and stuff like that. I read a bit of science fiction. Um, I actually ended up reading a lot of, my friend would hand me his Star Wars extended universe books. Ended up reading a whole bunch of them. They were fun. But yeah, really just anything good, some bad stuff as well.
Okay.
Sometimes I would watch a TV show and I think, oh, I want to actually read the book. And that was always, sometimes you get a good result, sometimes you get a bad result, sometimes you get a really bad result. But yeah, pretty much anything.
Okay. Now, you mentioned books that originate in the States and the UK. Was there any Australian literary works that you enjoyed or might have influenced you?
I've read a lot, but mostly for school. I didn't particularly enjoy them a whole bunch. There are good Australian novels. I don't know them off the top of my head. But I know I much more enjoy Australian movies, and to a certain extent, Australian TV shows. I think we know how to make a good movie here. But the only one that I can remember that I enjoyed a lot was a series called The Day After Tomorrow, I think, which was a sort of end of the world science fiction kind of story set in country Victoria, which is the state where I'm in.
Okay, very good. So, thinking back to your younger years, did you have any mentors that surrounded you that encouraged you with your desire for writing or art?
Not really, no. I was always encouraged, but there wasn't someone I could go to really help with the kinds of things that I was interested in. And I didn't realize that people were paying attention to what I was doing until after. I remember I got a call about a year after I graduated high school, and the teacher there was like, "Come back, we want to give you the art award for last year." And I was like, "Oh, really? I didn't even know you guys thought of me that way." So I was always sort of off doing it on my own, but you could always buy me for my birthday, a how to draw kind of book. I would love that, and I would get them, and I would do all the little examples and practice the methods and stuff like that. But no, there wasn't a person really that I could interact with one on one.
Okay, but you did take art in high school?
Yep, yep.
Okay. And what did your education in art continue after that?
Yeah, well, I went straight out of high school into graphic design. but I didn't get into the university level, so I had to do what we have here called TAFE, which is more of a practical sort of technical skill kind of school. And it was really focused on art. I mean, I got to just do art from 9 to 5, 5 days a week. It was like having art class for 5 days a week at a, at an advanced level. And yeah, I got to do everything, sculpture, painting, drawing, drafting, everything. It was great. It was fantastic. And I did that for, I think, a year, maybe 2 years. And then went into university after that. So yeah, there was a good amount of art schooling involved.
Okay, what did you study in university?
Went straight into graphic design. So you do a little bit of art stuff there, but it's mostly more about you're learning how to become a commercial graphic designer. It's a lot of layouts and typography and design history and all that sort of stuff. So you're doing less with your hands and more on computers and doing projects and stuff. But yeah, that was a 4-year course. I graduated with a bachelor in graphic design.
Wow, beautiful. Okay, so I guess it goes without saying that education helped you reach to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. It was also, it facilitated a lot of things that led me to where I am as well. I always would have these little projects, businesses, side things. I was making t-shirts. I made a skate magazine, stuff like that. I was selling novelty signs, and it would all incorporate the marketing. I'd make websites. I'd print t-shirts. I have to design the t-shirts and design all the little bits that go with it. And then obviously with the magazine, I'm laying out the magazine, doing all the typography and all the editing and stuff like that. So yeah, it was a mix of all that stuff and the university stuff that's where I collected all the knowledge that I needed, almost all the knowledge that I needed to be able to do what I'm doing now.
Okay, this is starting to fall into place and make sense here, because your website marketing Lucent is absolutely excellent, and you do have shirts on there, which I've seen, and other pieces of merchandise that people can pick up. So this is starting to make sense here. So aren't you going to come to the US soon?
Yes. So on the 28th and 29th, I'll be in Tampa for Tampa Bay Comic Con. First time ever in the States. It's going to be a bit of a whirlwind tour. I'll be meeting and staying with my friend for about a week. I've got to get back to work, sadly, but it's a long way to come for a week. But yeah, the cool thing about it is people have been sort of watching me on YouTube or following my books and stuff for years now. And, I finally get to meet them face to face. So yeah, that's going to be really fun.
Well, awesome. Welcome to the United States, and I know that you're going to have a good time here. Florida has some excellent food, really nice people, and you'll be in good company.
Looking forward to it.
Okay. So have you visited other countries before?
Oh yeah, my dad was a pilot, so we were always traveling. And then he lived overseas for, I think it could be as long as 15 to 20 years. And for a good number of them, we would go and stay with him during the summer. He lived in Malaysia, he lived in Thailand, he lived in Kuching. And then sometimes we would go over there, and then he would be flying to Europe. So I went to Switzerland. I've been to London. I've been to Paris. I studied in Germany for the last 6 months of my degree. That's where I met my wife. Went to Germany, met a French woman, brought her back, and traveled quite a bit around Europe. But yeah, this will be the first time I ever come over that way to America. So yeah.
Okay, cool. So tell us about the Lucent. I know that you would probably like to talk about that. What is the Lucent and how did it come to be?
When I was studying, I had really crazy hours. And well, actually, going before that, right back to childhood, the earliest dream that I remember, I was about 2 years old, and I remember being aware that I was dreaming in the dream, and I remember the dream. And it's always just sort of been this thing that I could do. Could often notice that recognize that I'm awake in my dream, and I'm aware that it's a dream. It was a great for
Really?
kind of defending myself against nightmares. Eventually, I started with just waking myself up, and then eventually I started sort of fighting back, which was a lot of fun over the years. And so I always had this story in my head as like, imagine if that kind of was a bit more real, that you got that out of the dream world in some way. I never really knew how that might work though. And then in the late 90s, The Matrix came out, and that had that whole system of you kind of get plugged into this thing and you can do amazing things. And that sort of really inspired me to come back to this premise that I had. And I started thinking about it more and more. And then eventually I decided, well, all right, it's time to sit down and write this thing. And that's what I did. And I just started writing. And I was writing for a long time. I'd never written anything before properly. As much as I outside of school. And I realized, I really didn't know how to craft a story properly. I was kind of jumping ahead. So I put that on pause and went back and really dived into how to write, how to actually construct the narrative and make it work and everything. So that's what I did. And I started writing in earnest. And I came into another roadblock again, some point around 2014, where I just couldn't get the story to work how I wanted it to. And that's when I found French bande dessinées, French album comic books for the first time. These big hardcover albums that they call them. And they were unlike any comic I'd seen before, unlike any American comic I'd seen before. And I was like, this is my story. This is what it is. So I started retooling what I had into more of a comic book format. And ever since that's where I've been ever since. So essentially, if you go back to the dreams, that's what it is. So the story is, there's this secret, this knowledge that has been kept from humanity. And the only way to really tap into it is through your dreams. But this is all hidden from our sight. You and I, the kind of normal person, we don't have any access to this information. It's been these techniques have been long forgotten over thousands of years, protected by a certain group of people. And they exist in a sort of they exist in a secret order that it reaches back thousands and thousands of years. And that's the sort of premise. That's the story that I came up with for the world as it is. Now with my story, much like how in, say, Star Wars, you've got the galaxy and everything that's happening with the Empire, and then you focus in on Luke Skywalker. In my story, you have all that's happening around in the world and throughout history, and my story focuses on the main character, Ella Forsyth, who, a bit like Luke Skywalker, she has no idea about this greater, at the start of the story, she has no idea about this greater world that exists. And, but she's about to learn, essentially. And that's where we start with the first book.
Okay. Now, with this universe, and I believe you have 3 books now, correct?
Two books.
2, and the third one's coming. Okay. Does the overall story, or is the overall story something that you conceived as an overall story and that you are breaking into parts?
Yes, definitely. The way it's written is, and it's come to be known as the mystery box style, where you present the reader or the audience with these things that they can't explain yet because you haven't given them the information yet. It's a puzzle, but you're only handing them one piece at a time, and they can't see what the picture is supposed to look like and the pieces don't connect yet. And the hope is that that what they're seeing, even though if they don't know how it's all connected, is so intriguing, and they want to know what happens next, that they will continue reading and putting it all together. In the meantime, they're theorizing how this all works themselves. They're coming with their own ideas. So the only way to do that is to make sure you have the whole story already plotted out, planned out, because you need to be planting seeds, putting setups and payoffs the whole way. So yes, I've got the sort of Ella Forsyth saga all planned out, and half of it's already written down to the dialogue. The rest is written down to events, and then some of it written down to page by page. But yeah, absolutely, there's no way I could do this by the seat of my pants, because I need to be able to drop hints and clues and introduce characters that need to be there for the reveals and the twists and the climax to actually have any impact later on at the end of the story.
Very interesting. Okay, now let me ask you this. Can you give us a little sliver of a secret hint about these stories?
Something that I can say, which I won't spoil the thing,
Yeah,
is
no
that
spoilers here.
the I really like the idea that this story is real and it's happening all around us, but we just can't see it. As you read it, it's happening out there. We're just not aware of it. One thing I love to do is because the story spans the entire breadth of a human civilization. So it's delved into all kinds of history. I take actual historical people or mythological characters, and put them into the story. So if you were so inclined, you can read them in the Lucent and then go and research them out there in the in the real world, on Wikipedia, on somewhere on Google, and find out a little bit about who they are and their life, where they're from, so you can get more clues as to maybe their involvement or what they're up to or what timeline they're in and stuff like that. So yeah, there's a little bit of something you can get from that.
Okay, that sounds fascinating. That's really good, and I'm looking forward to this. So tell us about the art.
So I do all of the art myself, uh, which is pretty crazy. I didn't realize when I started that not many people do that. But yeah, so that was the reason when I thought, oh, I'm going to make a comic. That was the thing that was really kind of stopping me, because I said, well, that sounds like a lot of work and a lot of drawing, and I haven't done that before. But I was feeling very confident with my art from school and t-shirts and all that sort of stuff. And I really thought, I think if I apply myself, I can do it. I jumped onto YouTube. I was checking out how to draw comics, and really brushing up on a lot of those things that I learned back when I was a kid, methods of drawing heads at different angles and stuff like that, and sort of relearning all that and getting recharged there. I went onto YouTube as well to learn how to color them. And yeah, I got to work, and it's sort of a thing of no time to waste, because I know I've got so many things to draw. So it was kind of a deal of, well, if I'm drawing it, I'm putting it in the comic, and it's been like that ever since. So the very first drawing that I ever drew for the comic is on page 1, and it's been
Wow.
like that pretty much ever since. And thankfully, it didn't look terrible. Sometimes it wasn't that good, and I did end up going back and changing some things when I've gotten a bit better at it. But for the most part, I mean, that's how it is. Yeah.
That's astounding. You self-educated in art out of necessity.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. I never had dreams of becoming the next big comic book artist. I want the art to facilitate telling the story. So I want it to be good. I want it to work. So that's why I put the effort that I put into it. But it really is all in service of the story that I want to tell.
Okay, well, that is unbelievable, because I've been watching your show on YouTube, and I would have never imagined that you suddenly self-educated in art, because the art is absolutely beautiful.
Well, thank
Uh,
you.
so I guess, am I correct that it's a bit unusual for a graphic novel creator to write the story and do the art?
It's less unusual in Europe. And that's really where I was sort of coming from at the time when I decided to do it, was to follow what the French do, where that does happen more often. Not all the time, but it does happen more often. And I've since come to learn that it happens a lot in Japan as well. Not so much in America, where they have a writer and then they get artists and colorists and everything. But it's not unheard of, but yeah, it's unusual.
Okay. So your next edition that is coming out, that just reached that $45,000 goal tonight, and
Mhm.
congratulations.
Thank you.
The art is by you, the
Mhm.
story is by you, and
Yep.
you are going to have someone else letter it.
That's right. Yeah. So I could letter it myself, but it's one of those tasks where um I really don't mind deferring to someone who's a bit more of an expert in it. And I have so many other things that I could be doing other than that. But we went with this letterer, Eric Weathers, on the first book, who did an amazing job. This book is a bigger book. It's 100 pages all up. So that's just an added cost as well. I didn't want to commit to that without knowing that we would, have the amount of cash on hand to be able to afford to get that done. So we made that the $45,000 stretch goal, which means obviously more than enough to pay for Eric to come in and help me with it. And I'm really happy that he is, because he's a great letterer. He did a great job
No.
on the first book.
Okay, beautiful. So how many parts do you plan for this story to be?
I think I've got it down to 5. So when I started, I was thinking it would be 7. But I think when you get working and you realize the pace of the story, and then I also became a bit more cognizant of the amount of story, the kind of pacing that the readers are actually wanting, and they might want a little bit more as the story progresses. So this, a lot of stories do this. They start off a bit slower. You're getting to know the story, the characters and stuff, and then the action really starts picking up, and the pace starts picking up with it. So now I think I've gotten it down to 5. It's not guaranteed at that. I mean, I'm not extending or shortening the story. It just means like how how can I fit it into certain number of books. But and that story will conclude the Ella Forsyth arc. That'll be her story in this wider world. I have other stories that I am writing and have written that will be made as well, that will be tied in the same world, that will be adjacent to her story. That you don't necessarily need to read them to understand her story, but I think it'll elevate the whole thing. So at least at the moment, my goal is to put out these 5 books, and then put maybe a smaller book out in between each of these books, so to constantly be getting content out.
Okay. So at the end of this 5-part story, that's not going to, you're not stopping there. You're going to keep going.
That's going to be a little bit while away, but if the audience is there and there's still interest in the story, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's that kind of story where I will have the world set up with all the big players, and people will know about them, and hopefully they'll be invested in them and what they're doing. So yeah, I'll continue on until people tell me to go away.
Okay, very good. So to hear that somebody has just crowdsourced almost $50,000, it may seem shocking. And what I'm wondering is that what is the production process like? You've obviously had the story and been working on it
Mhm.
for many years, and then you crunched and became an excellent artist by self-education, which is amazing. After that, what is the production process like? How did you actually get these printed on paper and bound and mailed and in the customer's hands?
Well, again, that goes back to all those things that I was doing while I was at university and even after. I had an Etsy shop where I sold, I think, 3 or 4 thousand orders of these novelty signs that I was hand making. So I already had a understanding of dealing with shipping things out internationally, you know, talking with customers and that sort of stuff. Being a designer now for 20 years, I've printed hundreds of things, and you know that's something that a lot of people don't know, that there is a process to that. It's called pre-press. It's getting things ready for print essentially, and making sure that it goes to the printer in the file type that it needs to go to and all that sort of stuff. So I already have all that knowledge already. You know, so it really was, I could just slot right in and use all these skills and knowledges that I'd collected over the years and just make it all work. It really was the right place, right time, and right thing for me to do at this moment in time.
Okay. So it sounds like all of your skills came into play all together like a beautiful
It
marriage.
was an alignment of the planets. It really was, and it wasn't just to do with the book. You know, it was a bunch of other things to do with the channel as well, the YouTube channel. So it all really came together, and it's kind of, I didn't notice it until I was in the middle of it. And then I would look around and notice that a lot of people were coming to me for help because they didn't have these skills, or they would have to outsource them. And I'm happy to help. I'm happy to share around what I know. And they could potentially come back to me with a contact somewhere, some manufacturer or something. And so it all worked out. It was pretty amazing, actually, working like clockwork almost.
Okay, I've seen a little bit of that that commingling of people helping. In fact, I believe that I found you on Desolate Souls Studios up in Winnipeg,
Mhm.
Canada. Jay Doyle and John
Yep.
Osicek that are working on their graphic novel. I caught them on YouTube one night, and you were on there, and that's when it kind of opened my eyes into this whole independent comic creation process. And it's interesting how all of you working together will cross promote. And what I'm wondering is, with your books, The Lucent, um, are are you shipping internationally, and where do they ship from?
We are shipping internationally, because I found success on the first book, and I was able to join up with another creator who found success on his. He already had other books before me, so he already had kind of had a bit of a head start. But you know, we were both two successful crowdfunders in comics in Melbourne, in the same city. We got together and got locked in a business postage deal, shipping deal with Australia Post here, so that we were able to get good rates for bulk items out out of Australia into international. So our shipping rates are actually quite competitive against almost domestic US rates. I mean, not quite, but pretty close, which is a lot better than what a lot of people are getting on their international rates everywhere else, where, you know, sometimes you can pay 30, 40, $50 or more to send a single package out. We get it for 15.
Mhm.
So yeah, absolutely. And I've even as well, talking to that, people sort of helping out the network that we're building up. I've started helping American comic book creators ship their products within Australia. So they ship them to me in bulk, and then I post them out individually here, saving them a whole bunch of money on their shipping costs.
Okay, Wow, that is really cool. And I totally agree that your shipping rate is excellent. I was looking at ordering tonight, and I saw that, wow, $15 from Australia for 3 books is not bad. In
Mhm.
fact, that may be cheaper than here domestically. So
Yeah.
yeah, that is excellent. Um, Now, part of this interview series on teaching people how to achieve success in certain areas, such as yourself, it includes this one standard question. And everyone that I have ever interviewed in any area of the arts has one single thing in common. And what that's called is that's rejection. Now, whether you're an actor, an artist, a writer, a stage performer, it seems as if everyone has always experienced something called rejection, whereas basically something that you're working on or you're trying to do and it just doesn't work out. Have you ever experienced something like that? And if so, how did you deal with it?
Tons of times. Related to this, though, the biggest thing I can think of. So when I started, I didn't know anyone. I didn't know a single person in comic books. I didn't know how to get started, really. And the idea of I would make a comic, print it, and people would buy a physical item seems so far outside of the realm of possibility at the time. Remember, I have no followers on Twitter, no YouTube channel, nothing. So I did what I noticed a lot of other people doing, which is you go to online web comics and you build an audience there. And that's exactly what I did. I went to sites like Webtoons and Tapas and started putting up small chunks in what they call episodes. So it's, maybe a page a time or something like that. And you build an audience. And it can be humbling because you sink, and sometimes it was a month of work into an update, and then you put it online for people to see and you share it out on social media, and no one cares. You get no likes, no comments, nothing. And you're just sitting there for the next 2 days, just racking your brain. What did I do wrong? Why doesn't anyone like it? Why isn't anyone watching it or sharing it or anything? And yeah, it's in those moments you start to think, is this really something that can work? Um, the mindset that I've always had that's always done well for me is commit to something and see it through. And usually, almost always, when I've done that, eventually the ball gets rolling. It can be really slow to start, but when it gets rolling, it can really start rolling fast. It can become exponential. That's what I've noticed with the comic. That's what I've noticed with my YouTube channel.
Mhm.
I went through years, 3 years of YouTube, um, getting a couple of hundred views a day, sometimes nothing. But you just continue because you've got a goal in mind. You're going to continue doing it. You've made a commitment. You're going to stick to that commitment. And then all of a sudden, very quickly, 15 million views in about 6 months or something. It just takes off. And I've noticed that was the same with the comic. Just all of a sudden, people start being interested in it. Um, I don't know what it is exactly, but it just can happen like that. So as long as you stay consistent, committed to the task that you said you were going to do, I think as long as you're doing good work, eventually you'll start seeing results. But you've got to kind of just swallow that pride in the moment when you realize no one is interested yet.
Wow. Okay, that's very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. That has the potential to inspire other people that would find themselves in the same place when they're just getting started. I mean, don't you have 17,000 plus subscribers on YouTube now?
Yeah, and almost all of them came this year. So I think I started the year with
Oh,
4,000. It took me a good 3 or 4 years to build up to 4,000. And then in the last 6 months, I'm at 17 and a half. So again, that's how it happens. I mean, every time along the way, you notice people come along and they do so much better than you, and um, or you were doing well, and all of a sudden you're not doing as well, and you start to wonder why that is. What can I change? Um, just don't quit. If you have a goal, don't quit. And I think that's what happens a lot of the time, because that's the difference. A lot of the times people will just quit. And if you're one of the few people that actually sticks with it over a long period of time, and you look at others who are successful now, and they say, well, I've been doing this for 15, 20, 30 years in some cases. They never quit. They just kept going through it all. So that's my plan. That's what I plan to do.
Okay, very good. Okay, now on this next question here, I don't know if it's controversial or not, because I've asked this question to people uh, uh, in chat and on Twitter, and I get very mixed results. Um, I'm going to ask you, what is Comicsgate? Because I actually really don't know.
Mm-hmm. Comicsgate is to me, because if you try and say this for other people, they'll say, no, you're wrong. So to me, Comicsgate is the freedom to enjoy and create comics outside of the I guess you could call it like a sphere of influence or sphere of control of what I consider malevolent forces within the industry. And it's not just within comics. I see it within entertainment. I see it within academia, government, business. I truly believe that there is a malevolent mindset. Elon Musk calls it a mind virus, the woke mind virus. That in different ways is really trying to take control over all of society, and make sure that everyone is in lockstep and doing only what it wants people to do. And the way I see it is that's what's happened to almost all of the comic book industry, where you have a very small, very radical group of people who have taken essentially control over what happens in comic books. And Comicsgate is made up of fans and creators who said, no, we're going to make comics the way we want to make them, and you're not going to stop us. And because we said that, the people, the powers that be, came out and said, oh, that's because you're a racist. It's because you're a sexist. It's because you're a bigot of some kind. Just completely smearing, just to stop others from going and seeing what essentially is happening in with Comicsgate, or really anywhere else that is not within their purview. That's how I see it. So to me, it's people who are just sort of taking their destiny in their own hands. And thankfully now we have technology that allows this to happen. Whereas previously you would be if you weren't in lockstep with the powers that be, you would be gatekept from the means of distribution. We don't need the means of distribution anymore. We have the internet, we have crowdfunding, we can sell directly to readers. We can speak to them through YouTube. So that's what we're going to do, and that's what we are doing.
Okay, very good. That's very interesting. Now, do you feel that your way of publishing is the wave of the future? And is there room for budding talent?
Definitely room for budding talent. Absolutely. We see that. I saw that just the other day again. Someone who came along, a young kid, 18 years old, first comic ever, really moving books, just really based off his talent, sheer talent. Is it the way of the future? It's a part of the future. I still hope that we can eventually, enough of the industry, comic books, novels, games, can sort of come to its senses and realize that there shouldn't be everyone fighting all the time. You know, we can disagree on certain things and still do business together and make art together and do all that sort of stuff. I still am holding out for that future, and that future includes brick and mortar stores and conventions and all sorts of more traditional means of distributing and selling books. But it will also include this new way of crowdfunding. There's something, really back to basics when it comes to crowdfunding. You're selling directly to the end, the person who's going to receive the book. There's something really magical about that, and I love that it's a very competitive market. It means if you want to succeed, you're going to have to work harder and be better than the people next to you. And that just makes for great art, great stories, and great product.
Okay, very good. Now listen, I had asked you for an hour, and we are nearly to that, and I only have a couple more questions. Can I keep going here?
Yep, let's keep going.
Okay, you just made me think of something. Have you thought of having your stories translated into Japanese and marketing them through brick and mortar stores in Japan, which still today is typically how manga and graphic novels are sold?
Yes, but to me, I want to wait until I have more of a fuller story together, because at the moment, it is very much a sort of introduction to the story thus far. And with the second book, we're going to be delving further in, sure, but the story's not going anywhere. And so I would much rather wait until I have more of it to present it to the broader audience who don't know who I am from YouTube or follow me on Twitter. They're just seeing the book for what it is. I have no problem just waiting a little bit, me getting more of it done, to kind of, because I'd always thought I would get it translated into French.
Okay.
It was made in a more European style than a traditional American comic. And so I really think it would have great appeal over there. There's a huge scene. It's not as big as the manga scene, but it's really big over there in France for this kind of thing. But yeah, I'll get it translated into as many languages as is necessary to be able to get out to as many people. Just that's probably a few years away now.
Okay, very good. Now, shifting gears here in closing, have you ever seen Doctor Who?
When I was a kid, but
Okay.
the last Doctor Who I watched was the guy with the big curly hair
Tom
back in the
Baker.
80s. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm a bit out of the loop.
Okay. Okay. It's not a requirement. So, and what is your favorite form of entertainment media?
Oh, I would have to say novels. I love novels. That's my sort of first love. Sadly, I don't get to read them anymore because I just don't have time with doing all the art and everything. But after novels, probably, I think I like TV shows now. I would have said movies back in the day, but I think I like a really good series, a really well made series is probably what I get the most sort of fulfillment out of. Yeah.
Okay. Would you ever think of writing a novel?
Well, originally with the story, I was thinking maybe it could have been a novel, but that's where I kind of ran into trouble because just the content, just it needed a visual element. I have played around with some synopsises for novels, but it's not anything that I could focus on at the moment. But yeah, I absolutely would. I think that would be a blast.
Okay, very good. Do you happen to have a favorite charity?
A favorite what? Sorry.
Favorite charity?
Um, my wife used to work for Save the Children. I don't know if you've heard of them. I actually used to do some work for them as well in the graphic design department. I think they do good work. They go around. They exist in a lot of poor countries, and they just specifically focus on local programs and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah, they're a good outfit.
Okay, very good, Michael. Hey, thank you for meeting with me today. This is very interesting, and I do feel that it fits in perfectly with this interview series. And what I'm wondering, was there anything that I did not ask you today that you wish I would have?
I think we covered all the bases. I think it was a good, nice, contained interview. Yeah, I think we're good.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let me take us out. Folks, for those of you that have learned something from this or enjoyed it in any way, thank Mr. Bancroft for his time and go check out The Lucent. It's very easy to find. You can go to thelucentcomic.com and you might just find something that you will love. Everyone have a good night. Peace out from San Francisco. Take care, Michael.
Thanks so much.